North Korea launches what appears to be its longest-range missile yet, a missile that could hit the U.S.
I don't like to talk about what I have planned, but I have some pretty severe things that we're thinking about.
But there are lots of questions about just how much even the world's most powerful nation can do. Tonight, unbridled ambition, tough talk, and limited options. It's all part of Politics Unplugged. Good evening. This is Politics Unplugged, and I am your host, Dennis Welch. And tonight we're going to be starting with talking about North Korea and the growing threat coming over there. And here to talk to us about that today is Dr. Jeffrey Kubiak, the senior fellow at the Center on the Future of Warfare at Arizona State University. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It sounds like a really pretty ominous sounding name there, the future of war and stuff like that. First, before we get into this whole Korea question, what exactly is the mission of your office?
Right. Well, the Center on the Future of War is actually another one of those innovative ASU things that we're trying to do something new, a little more outreach, a little networking into policy realm. So the center actually is a connective tissue between a lot of the faculty at ASU and a think tank in Washington, D.C. called New America, which is a very policy-oriented think tank full of former administration officials, former military officers, and that sort of thing. So we've engaged them both in education and research and a whole sort of other things. They actually are going to take part and help us put together a master's degree in global security that I'm working on right now. And so we can bring together a whole bunch of resources under one heading of the Center on the Future of War. It's a pretty interesting and innovative idea, and it's gaining some traction.
Okay, now, let's move on now. Let's talk a little bit about that. North Korea, I mean, obviously, as this country here was celebrating its Independence Day, North Korea launches an ICBM out there. How was the news received? How did you interpret that?
Well, I was, I guess, more surprised and maybe disappointed that actually caught a lot of our intelligence folks off guard, that they actually had the capacity to launch an ICBM. It seemed to surprise more people than I was hoping it would have surprised. But that being said, this is really only the next step in a path that North Korea has been on for a long, long time, and part of their strategy for securing regime survival into the long-range future required that they had some ability to hold the U.S. at risk in order to prevent some sort of, at some point, some attempt at regime change.
Any indication at this point, though, I think a lot of people are looking at it was just the launch of the missile. Any indications that it could actually carry a nuclear warhead?
Well, they assessed I think they assessed the payload capacity of the missile to carry something of a nuclear warhead at a certain distance, but the degree, I don't think there's folks who are really comfortable with the fact that North Korea has the technology yet to make a nuclear weapon that small and actually function. There's no indication to this date that that's possible, but quite frankly, their technology is advancing at a fairly significant rate, almost an accelerating rate, so it would not be out of the realm of possible over the next couple of months to years that's deemed reasonably.
And some people may want to wonder, maybe you can expand a little bit on this. How is a country that is so isolated? It's the hermit nation is how it is referred to, and the hermit kingdom. If it's so isolated, how can it be advancing its nuclear capability so quickly right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Clearly, as isolated as they are, they have a fairly significant connection to the outside world. They've had connections with Pakistan for years and years. They've had connections, clearly, trade in some level with Russia and with China. So there's more going on there. There's more commerce and intercourse between nations with North Korea than we think probably in a popular realm, because we see our attempts to isolate them, and it's not complete in total.
Now, obviously, too, on the campaign trail, President Donald Trump, then candidate Donald Trump, had said that he would not allow North Korea to have a nuclear weapon that could strike the U.S.
Right.
What are his options right now? Because it seems like, because you hear it over and over, his options range from bad to even worse.
And that'd be my assessment as well. I don't know that there's a good option. The reality of it is that the U.S. has had missiles with nuclear warheads pointed at it for 50 years. And this would just be another one of those nations who's going to have nuclear warheads to point at the United States. And I would suspect that in a lot of ways, the same ways that deterrence has worked with China and the former Soviet Union, or the Soviet Union and now Russia, it will probably work that way to a large degree with North Korea as well over time. So a military option to take out the nuke, to take out their nuclear capability, I think is absolutely positively the worst idea. There are 10 million people live in Seoul, 30 miles from the DMZ. That would be a humanitarian crisis of the nth degree. We would never want to see that. Other options, Chinese leverage or Russian leverage or something like that to bring it to denuclearize the peninsula. problematic at so many levels.
Yeah. I mean, that is one question too. Is like, how can China step in? What are their options? Would they be willing to? Because it seems, from an outsider looking in, that maybe China is trying to assert itself as the leader of that region, and part of that, and part of their agenda may be to limit the U.S. influence in that region.
Right.
And that would, it seems that North Korea can keep the U.S. in check at that point.
Well, there's actually, I think at this point, China would be at advantage to tone down North Korea if they could, at least tone them down, because quite frankly the higher the profile that North Korea has and the higher profile that our administration gives them, the more U.S. military force is going to be focused on a part of the region, a part of the world that China, actually, you're right, wants to claim more influence over and rid of U.S. influence. So actually, in my mind, the North Korea issue is actually creating a strategic problem for China, because it creates a need for the U.S. to be there. They're better off when it was quieter, and our focus was elsewhere than to be focusing on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, and it also seemed like this week Mr. Trump seemed to give up on the idea himself. Like he was tweeting, at least, with working more with China. And I want to show you kind of this tweet here. He said trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter.
Right.
So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try.
And they're not going to stop trying, right?
Yeah.
It's probably the most important strategic relationship in the world, and we're going to work a lot of issues with China, and one of them is going to be an ongoing relationship with North Korea.
So how fearful should people be when they see something like this? I mean, you see the screaming headlines, like a missile could strike U.S. and whatnot, but what are we looking at here?
It doesn't strike fear into my heart. I'm a former nuclear bomber pilot, so I have some experience thinking through nuclear warfare as a part of my professional development, and there's nothing about this that really scares me. It's a troubling strategic development for the United States and for our role in the world and our influence in East Asia. But I don't see that as being a particularly devastating or something to dramatically fear. It doesn't threaten the existence of the United States. A war with Russia, a war with China probably does. A war with North Korea does not.
Yeah, and what kind of role could Russia have? Obviously, we tape here on Friday.
Right.
President Trump, President Putin had just met. It seemed like it went smashingly well.
Right.
If you listen to the word coming out of both administrations. What can we see out of that country?
You always have to hold your breath when you're working with Russia. There's not a lot. I mean, there's not a lot to trust, quite frankly, going forward in anything we do with Russia. Their interests and our interests do overlap. There's no two ways about that. But they diverge on so many areas. And the narrative that holds the Russian polity together for Putin oftentimes is an anti-West, which then equates to an anti-U.S. narrative. And he can only allow the U.S. and Russia to ever get so close before he starts foregoing some of the power he needs to actually hold control within Russia.
Yeah. And I also want to ask you, too, there was another tweet that the president sent out. We don't have a copy of that, but it said that, Trump tweeted out that basically that China, Japan may not, South Korea may not, they're looking for big action coming out of them. Is there any risk that we could see a nuclear arms race in that part of the world?
That's always a risk.
Because right now, obviously, Japan, South Korea, they don't have nukes, but they certainly have the technology, have the economy to try to actually probably get into that market pretty quickly.
And that's always a risk with proliferation. If North Korea can somehow decouple the nuclear umbrella that we have for our allies in East Asia, Japan and South Korea, namely, because they can hold us at risk, and therefore are we going to risk Juneau and Anchorage and possibly Seattle or Honolulu or something like that to retaliate for some sort of blast against Japan or South Korea? That's a big question. That's a very big question.
Now, and if this administration, if this country allows North Korea to keep its nuclear arsenal with no retaliation or whatnot, does that send a message to the other countries in the world, maybe run by strongmen dictators like, hey, get yourself a nuclear weapon? That's
a pretty well-known story, though. That's not something that's a news to anybody. I mean, everybody saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi when he gave up his program, and everybody saw what happened to Saddam Hussein when they thought he was going to get a program. So there's a lot of mixed messages for strongmen, for the bad boy regimes in the world. But it's not a secret. That is what ensures regime survival for those who are intent on changing your regime.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. That's all the time we have for this segment.
All right.
Fascinating discussion. We'll hope to see you again here on the show very soon. But we do have more here to come on Politics Unplugged. The feds say they want voter information. The states, they say no. Just ahead, questions about fraud and privacy at the ballot box here on Politics Unplugged.
When the monsoon hits. Stay with the team powerful enough to cover it from all sides. CBS 5 and 3 TV, the power of two. The largest team of meteorologists in the valley. Pinpoint tracking of the storm's every move. Across the state, down to your neighborhood. From the air to the ground and where it's heading next. Keeping you and your family safe this monsoon season. From 3 TV and CBS 5, the power of two.
We know car accidents don't always happen Monday through Friday. If you're hurt in a car wreck, we're available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You don't have to wait until Monday to get the help you need now.
977-1900.
Stay cool and dive into hot summer savings this year at American Furniture Warehouse.
It's heating up outside, so come to American Furniture Warehouse for some hot summer savings. You'll get sizzling savings on the largest in-stock selection of bedroom collections anywhere. Kick the summer off right and get your bedroom ready for the warm nights ahead. Style, savings, selection. That's today's American Furniture Warehouse.
I'm a time management expert. I plan on every minute of every day. But that all changed when I was rear-ended.
Nobody plans to be in an accident, but unfortunately they happen. If you're suffering in pain, call Emergency Chiropractic. They will treat you with no deductibles, no copays, and no out-of-pocket costs.
Emergency Chiropractic helped get my life back on schedule.
Emergency Chiropractic, the kind of care you want today. Buckle up.
From the moment they're born, they're unique. As their eyes continue to change, Nationwide Vision is here to help them be as healthy as possible. Right now, you can get a pair of kids' eyeglasses that include polycarbonate lenses for only $49.99. Visit nationwidevision.com for more information.
Big Surf Water Park in Tempe is now open. Visit BigSurfFun.com and download the Big Surf Water Park app for special offers daily, including Mom's Day Mondays, Dad's Day Thursdays, and a lot of other great specials and events.
If you've been in a wreck and wondering if it's too late at night to call an attorney, the answer is no.
We're Lerner & Rowe. When all other law firms can't be bothered to pick up the phone, we're available 24/7.
Lerner & Rowe is the way to go. Call 977-1900.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. The federal government says to fight voter fraud, it needs voter information, but more than half the states say that is a request that has just gone too far. And joining us right now to talk to us about this issue is Matt Roberts, spokesman for the Arizona Secretary of State's office, and Adrian Fontes, the recorder for Maricopa County. Thank you both for joining us here. Now, first of all, I want to ask you first and foremost, why did the Secretary of State ultimately decide to deny this full request from this commission that was set up by President Trump to look into voter fraud?
Yeah, well, when we received the formal request on Monday, we come to find out that there was information that we weren't going to be able to provide under state law. So in that commission's letter, there was the specific request for Social Security information and an indication that they were actually going to be making that information publicly available. And that, at the end of the day, was what triggered Secretary Reagan's response.
But certainly it asked for other information out there, like voting histories, right, party registration, these types of, these are public records, aren't they not?
Well, you know, it's like if you think about it, the way the white pages were and then some of the other stuff, right? There is kind of white page information, your name and your address and things of this nature. Then there's other information further back than 4 years worth of voting history, last 4 of your Social Security number, driver's license number, mother's maiden name, these other more sensitive bits of information we just don't release under Arizona law. And they were asking for some of that, and so I think it's good that the Secretary decided to say no.
Yeah, and again, though, why not release some of that information if it is public record out there? Why not release the parts of it, at least comply with part of it?
Well, I think really it comes right down to the fact that they legitimately said in their letter that they were going to make that information public. Mm-hmm. And for the Secretary, even if some of these pieces of information that are a pretty normal records request that the county recorder and other county recorders typically have to respond to on a daily, if not frequent basis, was that there was sensitive information in there, and they were indicating that they were really going to put that out there for people to access, and that was a big concern for the Secretary.
And were you concerned at all with releasing some of that public information? Because I know I had talked to you right when the news was breaking that this letterhead was sent out to the various states. I think at the time I spoke with you, Arizona hadn't even received that letter. Right. And you seemed to be open to releasing at least some of that information.
Well, we were open to releasing the information if it fell within the four corners of the law. As Matt stated, you know, political parties, researchers, universities, some other institutions sometimes will get this information for legitimate purposes. Our original objection from the beginning was, look, we saw some of these letters going out to other states before Arizona received ours. We saw this exact same language coming up, and we thought, you know what, that's not a good idea because it's going to be publicly disseminated according to the commission itself. And in my view, that disqualifies any of the information going to them. So had they made a lawful request from the beginning, we would definitely have thought about it. But because the request was essentially an unlawful request, you know, the Secretary came around to the right decision, and we're happy about that.
Now, obviously, this commission that was put forward, the Presidential Commission on Voter Election Integrity was put together by President Trump, who has claimed that anywhere between 3 and 5 million people voted illegally in this country last year and possibly cost him the national popular vote. Any indication here in Arizona, I know you've been asked this over and over again, but I'm going to ask it again, any indication that there's any widespread voter fraud? Have you looked for voter fraud, and have you found any of it?
Sure, and Secretary Reagan will tell you any instance of voter fraud is certainly an issue. I think there's county election officials throughout the state that will tell you the same exact thing. That said, is there voter fraud widespread throughout Arizona? Most likely not. Over the last, since 2010, I should say, the state's prosecuted about 20 folks for voting, about 20 people for instances of double voting. So, is it a widespread problem? No. But do we need to be vigilant for it? Of course.
Are you seeing anything like that here on the county level?
No, I'm not. And here's my problem with this entire exercise. You know, before getting inaugurated, the president was very clear about 3 to 5 million people voted illegally. He talked about studies. He talked about evidence, and none of that has come to fruition. And so anything that justifies this really kind of strange, I mean, it looks like an ego boost search, right, thing. Anything that moves towards delegitimizing the results of our elections, the integrity of our elections, I've got a real problem with, because Maricopa County for a very long time in the state of Arizona, we've run great elections here, and this doubt that gets raised illegitimately and without evidence, that's a problem.
Now, you made a pretty interesting point when I spoke with you last week. You were saying that just the fact of asking for this information could itself be a form of voter suppression.
It is a form of voter suppression.
Explain some of that, because that's...
Well, look, I can tell you right now, I just got an email this afternoon from the Star Call Center. 20% of the calls that we're getting about voter registration. 80% change of address, a little bit of this. But 2 out of 10 people are asking to be removed from the voter rolls because they're afraid that the Trump administration is going to be getting their information. And I'm here to tell folks, you can trust the folks who've been running elections for a long time, not only this newly elected, but all of the staff that we've had there for years and decades. We're doing everything we can to protect your information from this kind of abuse, and that's why I've come out so strongly against this. It is an illegitimate request in the first place. The claims that the administration is making are founded in 0 facts whatsoever, and I'm here to try to assure Arizonans that you've got someone here who wants to protect democracy, and that means protecting your identities as well.
But it also seems like the government may not be done in its investigation into this voter fraud, that there's absolutely no proof exists across the country. Department of Justice also sent Secretary of State a letter. Now, they are asking for what you guys are doing to purge the rolls of anybody who is an ineligible voter. Is the Secretary of State going to comply with that request?
Well, we work with the federal government all the time when they ask for information, and I expect that we'll continue to communicate what our office does, along with our county partners do, to make sure our voter rolls are accurate. So, for example, we get monthly the rolls of felons and deceased people, and then our office actually cancels and removes those voters from the rolls. So that's amongst the things that the Department of Justice is asking us to describe, and in addition to that, some of the information that, and some of the processes, I should say, that our counties actually do to do the same thing.
So again, you will be complying with that request?
I suspect so. Our elections team is looking at the particular request now, and I haven't heard there's any reason to believe that we won't be at least communicating our office's processes and our state ways of going about making sure our rolls are clean.
Is the county recorder's office going to have any role in helping out with that request? Is your office going to be complying with it?
Well, under the Arizona statutes, the county recorders are the ones who actually hold the voter rolls. So we're the ones who, at the end of the day, put on or take off anyone from the voter rolls. The Secretary of State's office has a regulatory position in that. So at the end of the day, whenever any voter either comes on or comes off of the voter rolls in Maricopa County, at least, it's this county recorder's job to do that. And my office is really good at making sure that we check more than several databases before we do remove anyone, but on occasion we do.
So will you be complying with this DOJ request?
We'll be complying within the letter of the law, but at the same time, we're very suspect about why these two highly unusual requests are being made at the same time under this administration, particularly when we know that some of those folks in that administration are notorious for pushing forward a voter suppression agenda.
So real quick, I know I'm being told to wrap right now, but is there anything that you think that could prevent you from complying with this request? You're saying you're very suspicious of it right now. At the end of the day, is there something that you just may decide at the end, I'm not even complying with this?
Well, I haven't seen the motor voter request yet, and when that comes to us from the Secretary of State's office, we'll see. But I can tell you right now, when it comes to protecting democracy and protecting my voters, I'll take it to court if I have to.
All right. Well, thanks. I'm going to have to take a quick break here, but we do have lots more to come here on Politics Unplugged. The battle over health care reform puts Arizona Senator Jeff Flake in the spotlight and in the hot seat. Protesters say the vote to repeal Obamacare does not represent them. Just ahead, a senator under pressure. And Donald Trump says he has already closed a deal on Syria with Vladimir Putin. Just ahead, a closer look at what and how this presidential meeting could play out politically here on Politics Unplugged.
Can I help you? Are you a flooring expert? Yeah, sure. I need new flooring. Can you come out to my house for a free estimate? No, we don't do that. Can you give me some expert advice on what type of flooring's best for me? Not really. Can I see some samples in my home? Oh, and I need it installed before this weekend. We don't do that.
Big box stores just can't compete with saving selection and 5-star customer service from Express Flooring. Call now and save up to 71%.
Express Flooring is the best. Call 800-EXPRESS.
Integrity, quality, trust. I've spent over 20 years building Precision Air and Heating on these principles. Taking care of you, the customer, is my highest priority. We don't stop until the job is done right. I know what it's like to have contractors in my house, and I have to be able to trust them. At Precision Air and Heating, we promise to treat every customer with integrity, deliver quality, and earn your trust. You have my word on it.
Leave your old loan in the dust and get an auto 3-fi loan from Desert Schools Federal Credit Union. It's the auto refinance loan with triple the perks. Up to $500 cash back, rates as low as 2.99%, and up to 90 days before your first payment. With an auto 3-fi, triple the perks means triple the ways to put extra cash in your pocket. Tell your old loan to take a hike and get started with an auto 3-fi from Desert Schools today.
Get a better night's sleep and support a great cause during the 4th of July event at the Revive Sleep Center inside Living Spaces, where you'll find all the top brands, including our exclusive line of Revive mattresses. This collection features the latest technology in memory and cooling fabrics, with over 35 beds starting at just $4.95. And when you purchase a premium Revive mattress, we'll donate a mattress to Arizona Helping Hands to support local foster children. Only at the Revive Sleep Center inside Living Spaces.
Living Spaces.
The life you've been waiting for is here in the beautiful desert mountains of Wickenburg Ranch. Embodying a unique sense of freedom, Wickenburg Ranch is a place where everyday life is a remarkable life, a playful life, a life of luxury, a life where you create memories, not just look back on them, all in a place where neighbors not only know your name, but welcome you with a hello. Wickenburg Ranch, close enough to live away from it all.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It is now time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic, and with us today is Marcus Dellartino and Barry Dill, who is playing injured today. Thanks a lot for suiting up and coming on the show.
Marcus and I had a fight over Trump, and he got the best of me. Not really.
All right. Let's first of all, I just want to let's talk a little bit about that voter information request now coming from the administration, both from this commission put together by Trump and now the DOJ. What do you think this is all about, Barry?
I think it's about voter suppression. I think it's the guy from Kansas. The Secretary of State of Kansas is known. Chris Kobach is known for this sort of thing. It's outrageous. It's Hitlerian, and I'm certainly appreciate your previous guests for both standing up to this outrageous attempt to put together a national voter file. We don't even have a gun file on record all over. Why should we have a voter file in the country, on voters? No reason.
I don't think it's actually about voter suppression, and I think there's about 100 definitions of voter suppression. I think what's interesting about this is you have a Republican Secretary of State's office and a Democratic Maricopa County Recorder's office agreeing. What most people need to know, and frankly, the request is it's totally absurd. I, regardless of the situation, don't want my Social Security number going to anybody else than it needs to go to, right? And Barry knows that more than anybody else. But so the request is odd. If they are in fact looking for information that's readily available to all of us here in this room, they can get that now. I know what party you're registered for. I know when you voted in the election. I don't know how you voted, but I do know when you voted. So anything over the top from that amount of information is silly.
Okay, let's move on now. Let's talk a little bit about the Obamacare repeal. First of all, I kind of want to know explain why Jeff Flake is being targeted so heavily at this point.
Well, I think there's some, quite frankly, misguided notion that he may be vulnerable in his own primary. But it's odd that it's kind of those on the left that are doing the protesting. Now, having said that, let me say this: these people are afraid of this piece of crap legislation that's being discussed in Washington right now to take away their health care. That's certainly understandable. What the guy in Tucson did and the threat that he made is not reflective of the Democratic Party nor anyone. I hope he's prosecuted to the greatest extent that the law allows. There's no place for violence. And also, removing people from the office is something, as a former congressional staffer, we had to face from time to time. You can't leave people in the office overnight. So I think that sort of diminishes the whole message about putting Senator Flake on the spot. I think he has heard, clearly what the objectives are.
But the following day, there was the protest the one day, and then they locked the doors, wouldn't let them in the next day.
Right, and by their account, and I believe them, the property manager closed the doors. And frankly, that's the other businesses have a concern for not only their employees' security, but for the building as well. So I think
I've got to move on here. Really quickly, we are running out of time. I did want to hit the Trump thing. He obviously he was in Germany for the G20 meeting. He did meet with Vladimir Putin. They claim they have a deal now to help ratchet down the tensions in Syria. But also, the president did confront him, apparently, about meddling in the U.S. elections here. How do you think that's going to go over?
I hope the Syria thing goes very, very well. I wish they had talked about North Korea, which I don't know was on the agenda. And I think that the Russia thing, are renowned liars, and I'll believe them, but that's not a reflection on the station or you. That's my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see what the outcome is.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for coming by. And again, thanks a lot for stopping by and showing up injured. I really do appreciate that. But that is all the time we have tonight for Politics Unplugged. Be sure to tune in next week. Good night.